Picture a world suspended high above the ground, a patch of bright green grass surrounded by an iridescent blue sky populated with puffy white clouds. Or a pasture where hills roll like conveyor belts, pink and purple flowers dot the ground, and fish dart back and forth in sparkling ponds. These are the worlds within the video game Super Mario 3D world, and according to the latest research, exploring these colorful and fantastical 3D settings could improve your memory. And it's not just any video games that help. They must be 3D. Why? Hoping our next guest will explain. Craig Stark is a professor in the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior and fellow in the Center for the Neurobiology of Learning and Memory at the University of California in Irvine. Dane Clemenson is a postdoctoral scholar in the Stark Memory Research Lab in the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior at the University of California in Irvine. And they join us from KUCI in Irvine. Welcome to Science Friday.
Thank you for having us on.
Thanks.
Craig, where did the idea to use video games to improve memory come from? It's something that we've talked about a while. What was the genesis of your idea?
Well, it really started in some studies in the rodent. And we know in rats and mice, if you give them a large world to explore, something to run around and learn and explore in, we know that it does all sorts of great things for their brain. And the phenomenon is called environmental enrichment. We know it does great things for their memory, overall plasticity in the brain. And we wanted to see, could we actually do something like that in us, in people? And then the big question is, how do we do something like that in us, in college undergraduates or in adult volunteers here? I had a couple of ideas of things like looking at people about to do a semester abroad. And it turns out that's a tough thing to actually run here. But Dane had the really, really good idea that we could use 3D video games for this. Because people voluntarily go and spend hours and hours exploring these massive worlds. Mm-hmm. Going along, learning all sorts of things about them. And they're beautifully engineered. I mean, today's games are absolutely incredible. And maybe we could use this as some sort of big world that people could go around and explore and see if that's an analog of environmental enrichment from the rats.
So, Dane, how did you settle on Angry Birds and Super Mario 3D World?
A great thing about both these games is that they are incredibly easy to learn. It just takes a simple joystick and a jump button for Super Mario. And for Angry Birds, same thing. And so we know that Angry Birds is something that has been downloaded, billions of times on mobile apps. So people are engaged by it. They are, they want to play this type of game. And Super Mario as well. Super Mario has been around for decades, and it's kind of played by adults and kids alike.
Do you guys play video games?
We do play video games. I've always played video games, and kind of more recently, Craig and I have both been playing together.
In fact, last night we were online playing together. So yes, we have. I've certainly also taken up the habit as well.
Well, why would a 3D game be more beneficial to your memory than a 2D game? Craig?
That's, of course, the big question right now. And in truth, we don't know the answer just yet, but we do have a couple of ideas. One is that there's just a lot more spatial processing and spatial learning and memory that goes on with a three-dimensional game. It's a lot richer sort of environment. In a two-dimensional game, you have the screen in front of you, and maybe it pans up and down and this sort of thing, but that's really all there is to it. As soon as you're inside the game, though, you can start to look around and see all sorts of these spatial relations. Now, it doesn't need to be the spatial relations. It could just be there's a lot more stuff that you're learning inside it. They're richer kinds of games. It could also be the feeling of being immersed in it and that it seems a bit more real or something like this. And this is the kind of thing that actually we're trying to get at now in a nice new series of studies that the Dana Foundation has very graciously founded for us.
Dane, did you have to set up, turn your lab into like a big living room with couches and TV sets, things to sort of mimic what the gaming experience is like?
Kind of. We have a couple behavioral testing rooms that we've been using, and we literally just kind of, transported in a couple Wiis and a couple TVs. And right, so all the participants actually came into our lab, and they came into play for 30 minutes a day. In the study, they played for 2 weeks. But so we did have to kind of convert one of the rooms into a little game area, I guess.
Yeah, life's rough.
I know, it's so hard.
Craig, tell us about the improvements. You saw real improvements in people's memories, right?
Yeah, we saw marked improvements in it. My lab has been looking at what the hippocampus does in the service of memory for a long time now, and things like how does it change with age, and how does the change in the hippocampus relate to changes with memory and aging. And so we have behavioral tasks that are very, very sensitive to do well hippocampal function. And in one of the tasks, we show people a series of pictures of objects, and later on we can show them those same objects, ones they haven't seen, or ones that are very similar but not exactly the same thing. And we know from all of this other research that your ability to say to those similar lore items, the ability to say, yeah, that's similar, but it's not exactly the same one, that is critically dependent upon the hippocampus. That sort of level of extra detail. I know I've seen a rubber duck, but was it this exact rubber duck? That we know is dependent upon the hippocampus. And so we tested people in the memory, in this memory task and a number of other tasks before they went through any kind of training. They then, as Dane was saying, went through 2 weeks worth of 30 minutes a day worth of just playing video games, and we tested them again. And the astounding thing was that, well, if we didn't do anything, if you didn't come on in and play any games, there was no change in your performance. And if you played a two-dimensional game, Angry Birds, it didn't change your performance. But if you came in and you played Super Mario 3D World for those 2 weeks, it made your memory better. And one of the really neat things about this is it's not like a lot of brain training sort of approaches that have you train up on something that we're then going to test you on. Here, the test is just, well, is this the same kind of thing, the exact same object that I showed you before? And the training, if you want to call it that, is come on into the lab and play Super Mario 3D World. So it's not really the same kind of thing, and yet we're seeing that your hippocampus is working better. We're seeing that you're able to remember these things and to learn these things with this level of accuracy and detail in ways that you couldn't have before.
Do we have any idea why it takes the 3D version of it to be better than the 2D?
Yeah. Well, we think that the 3D version, for lack of a better word, may be exercising or stimulating the hippocampus more. We don't know because we can't measure a number of these things in people yet, but we know from the rodents that having them go and explore real environments here, having them do that does things like gets new adult neurons born into the hippocampus. And those new neurons get to be used for learning other new things. It's sort of you're getting more capacity into your hippocampus. And some of this was the work that Dane had actually been doing as a PhD student. And he's now been taking on, trying to map this into humans in my lab. And so it may very well be that by stimulating the hippocampus, by giving you something to learn, by challenging you in this way, you're actually making a better hippocampus.
So is this applicable to all of us? Are there 3D games that we should be playing that might help improve our memories?
Well, that's the hope. That's the hope that it does actually that it does actually apply to all of us. And that's why the current direction that we're taking is to try to see, well, what if we take naive middle-aged individuals? What if we take naive older individuals and give them these games to see if they can actually improve their memory ability? And that's also one of the reasons why we picked the games that we did to actually explore there. Super Mario 3D World, my kids were playing when they were 6, 7 years old. And so it's not a very complex game, doesn't take mastery of all sorts of gaming skills to be able to pick that up.
So do you say that if you're talking about your kids playing it at an early age, could you infer that if people start playing 3D video games at a younger age, well, it certainly can't hurt, can it?
I certainly don't want to be on the record for that. However, if the idea is that you're giving the system something to learn, you're really exercising your brain and you're exercising your memory in the same way that, well, going for a jog would be exercising your muscles and exercising your body, that this may actually be a good thing.
Would SimCity fall in that category too?
That is an interesting kind of possibility. And one of the things we're looking at is this style of game. So is it exploring the big 3D world, or is it the amount of information? And in something like SimCity, where you have a bird's eye view of your city, but you do have to keep track of where your resources are, and there are a lot of complexities to it, that's giving you a lot of information you're continually having to keep track of, learn, and remember. And so it may have similar kinds of things. We just don't know. We're also looking at another game, Hearthstone, which again doesn't have the big spatial memory component. It's a card-based game, but on the computer. And there's a lot to learn and a lot that could be exercising and stimulating your hippocampus that would be not spatial. And honestly, right now, we don't know which of these dimensions of it actually matters.
Well, I'm hoping all my Legends of Zelda days back in the day have benefited me years later. I want to thank you both for taking time to be with us today. Craig Stark is professor in the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior and a fellow in the Center for the Neurobiology of Learning and Memory at the University of California, Irvine. Dane Clemenson is a postdoctoral scholar in the Stark Memory Research Lab in the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior at the University of California, Irvine.